While many parts of the Western Hemisphere are experiencing unseasonably warm winter temperatures, it's still officially winter for another 7 weeks. So we're going to continue with our Winter Wheels series. Porsche and winter aren't necessarily the most natural association in the world, but today's sports cars do boast capabilities that their predecessors did not. It's a beautiful winter's day, probably about -20 out here right now. Not exactly what you'd call ideal convertible weather, but we're here at Mika Glees to test out whether or not a Porsche can function as your winter vehicle. Let's take it to the track. Okay, Michelle, it's clearly winter, and there's a Porsche whipping around on this track behind us. 10-15 years ago, you would never do this. You would take your sports car off the road if you cared about your sports car at all. What's changed since then?
Well, you're not the only one that thinks this way. We've been driving around in a few Porsches for the last couple of weeks in winter, and we've been getting the look, the eye. What are you doing in these cars? But in winter, it makes sense today because they're equipped with electronic stability control systems, what Porsche calls PSM in their models. So what it basically does is when the car starts to get out of line, the system steps in, cuts down engine power, and allows the driver to, with the twist of the wheel, to get back into line and keep control of the vehicle.
Yeah, I was noticing that when we were going for a ride earlier. What if you don't keep that stability control on, though? Because you do have the option to turn it on or off.
Well, most sports cars are rear-wheel drive. In the case of the Boxster or the Cayman, it has a mid-engine configuration, which means almost 50-50 weight distribution, great handling on this vehicle. In the case of a Porsche 911, for example, it has a rear engine, rear-wheel drive, so all the weight of the vehicle and most of the weight of the vehicle is in the back, behind the rear axle. So it's pretty tricky to drive. If you don't drive safely, you can lose control of the vehicle. And this is where the PSM system magically comes into play and helps you stay on the road.
Storage, because look at me. I'm wearing a jacket that is literally like a sleeping bag with arms attached to it. Where do I put that if I want to take it off in the car? What about my winter boots, which maybe I'm taking with me because I want to wear a lighter shoe while I'm driving? What about all the storage that I might need because winter's bulky, let's be honest.
It is winter. You should keep your winter coat on.
Well, that's what my mother said. Okay, what about other things that you might need in your car for the winter months? Like you definitely need a snow brush, an ice scraper. You should always have an emergency car kit. Where are you going to put that? And will you have room for anything else if you want to have a passenger?
Mm-hmm. Well, in the case of the Boxster or the Cayman, they actually have two trunks, one in the front, one in the back. Like I said, the mid-engine configuration means there's room for storage in the front and a small storage space in the back. So there is room for an emergency kit, for a jug of washer fluid, for this and that. I wouldn't go on a week-long trip in these vehicles, but even in summer, I mean, a sports car is a sports car.
How much the fact that you can drive these cars on the road now in the winter months has to do with the advances in other places, like maybe tire technology?
Well, of course, like anything, there is progress, and technology makes for better tires, more quality tires, or more grippier tires, if you will. 25 years ago, winter tires didn't perform as well as they do today, and that's just another reason why we can drive sports cars in winter now.
You could keep your Porsche on the road as your year-round vehicle, but there has to be some disadvantages. What are they?
Well, I'd say the big disadvantage is the low ground clearance for sports cars in general. When you're in heavy snowstorms or on a cold day like this, there's big patches of ice that maybe you're lying on the street and stuff. You got to really be careful. People don't bring their cars out in winter or keep them stored for the winter by respect. People respect their sports cars, and they will never endure to see salt and road grime on their vehicles in winters. It's a personal choice.
Oh yeah, baby. This is a winter car.